I was exactly 30 minutes late for Thanksgiving dinner. My husband Arthur had passed away 4 years ago, and ever since holidays had become a quiet routine of me driving across town to my daughter Sarah's house. A flat tire on my old sedan had delayed me, leaving my hands slightly smudged with grease, despite my best efforts to scrub them clean at a gas station. As I walked up the stone pathway to their brightly lit suburban home, the crisp November wind bit through my wool coat. I reached for the doorbell, but the dining room window was cracked open, letting the heat of the house and the sound of clinking glasses spill out into the night. I stopped. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see my daughter Sarah standing at the head of the table. Her husband Greg sat beside her, swirling a glass of expensive red wine I had likely paid for. Sarah raised her glass, a weary smile on her face. "To a peaceful Thanksgiving," she began, her voice carrying perfectly into the cold air. "And honestly, regarding Mom, it'd be better if she didn't come to these things. She just brings the mood down, always talking about her garden or Dad. It's exhausting." Greg chuckled, tapping his glass against hers. "Amen to that. We only invite her because we need her to co-sign the new house loan next month. Once that's done, we can finally get some space." I stood outside in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't feel my heart shatter into a million pieces. Instead, a cold, clear wave of realization washed over me. For 3 years, I had been their built-in babysitter, their emergency fund, and their quiet financial backing. I was 66 years old, and I was done being a stepping stone. I wiped the last trace of tire grease from my thumb, opened the front door without knocking, and walked straight into the dining room. I smiled. Traffic was terrible, but I'm glad I made it. I looked directly at my daughter and calmly announced one thing. "By the way, I'm putting my house on the market tomorrow, and I'm closing our joint accounts on Monday. I won't be helping with your new loan." Sarah's face turned pale. The silence in the dining room was so absolute, you could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Greg's wine glass froze halfway to his mouth. Sarah stared at me, her mouth slightly open, the color completely drained from her cheeks. I pulled out the chair at the end of the table, sat down, and placed my napkin neatly on my lap. I reached for the bowl of mashed potatoes and served myself a modest portion. Mom Sarah finally stammered, her voice thin and reedy. How long were you standing outside long enough to understand exactly where I stand in this family?" I replied, keeping my tone perfectly level. I didn't raise my voice. There was no need to scream. The truth was loud enough on its own. Greg cleared his throat, trying to recover his usual arrogant composure. He adjusted his expensive watch, a gift I had bought him for his promotion 2 years ago. "Rosemary, let's not be hasty. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. Hosting is stressful." "I'm not being hasty, Greg," I said, slicing a piece of turkey. "I'm being efficient. You want space. I am giving you space. And I'm reclaiming my own." "But the house," Sarah whispered, panic creeping into her eyes. "You promised we could use the equity from your house to secure our new mortgage. We already put down the earnest money." "Then you will have to figure out how to finance it yourselves," I said, taking a bite of the turkey. It was dry, just like adults do. The rest of the meal was eaten in agonizing silence. I didn't rush. I finished my plate, complimented the cranberry sauce, and wiped my mouth. I didn't wait for pie. I stood up, put my coat back on, and walked out the front door, leaving them sitting in the quiet wreckage of their own making. I had a lot of packing to do. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. The sprawling 4-bedroom house I had shared with Arthur felt different today. It no longer felt like a waiting room for my daughter's inheritance. It felt like an asset. My asset. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I logged into my banking portal. With 3 clicks, I transferred the entire balance of the emergency fund joint account, which only I ever contributed to, into a new individual account under my name alone. I then canceled the credit card I had given Sarah for groceries and the grandkids, which routinely showed charges for luxury salons and golf clubs. At 10:15 a.m., I heard the front door unlock. Sarah walked in, using her spare key. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back into a messy bun, clutching a travel mug of coffee. "Mom, we need to talk," she demanded, dropping her purse on the counter. "Greg was up all night. You can't just pull the rug out from under us because your feelings got hurt." I closed my laptop and looked up at her. "My feelings aren't hurt, Sarah. My eyes are open." I stood up and held out my hand. "I need my house key back." She blinked, stepping back. "What? No. Mom, be reasonable. What if there's an emergency? What if you fall?" "If I fall, I will call an ambulance," I replied, my hand still extended. "I am selling this house. You no longer need access to it. The key, please." She stared at me, trying to find the weak, accommodating mother she was used to manipulating. But that woman was gone. With a frustrated huff, she unclipped the brass key from her ring and slammed it onto the granite counter. "You're ruining our lives over one stupid comment," she muttered. "I'm securing my own life," I answered. "Now please lock the door on your way out. I have a real estate agent coming at noon." The real estate agent, a sharp woman named Helen, walked through my home and gave me a listing price that made my eyebrows raise in a good way. The market was hot, and the house was impeccably maintained. By Friday, a "for sale" sign stood proudly on my front lawn. On Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Greg's name. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Rosemary," he barked, not bothering with a greeting. "Did you cancel the credit card?" "Hello, Greg." "Yes, I did." "On Friday morning." I could hear the background noise. He was at a restaurant, likely a nice one, judging by the clinking silverware and soft jazz. I am standing at the register at the Oak Room, trying to pay for a business lunch, and my card was declined. "It's humiliating. It's not your card, Greg. It's my card." And I closed it. "We had an agreement," he hissed, his voice dropping low so his colleagues wouldn't hear. "You help us with daily expenses so we can save for the new house." That arrangement ended on Thanksgiving. I stated simply, watering my ferns with a small copper can. "You are a grown man with a salary. Pay for your own lunch. You're being incredibly petty," he snapped. "No, I am being financially responsible. Good luck with the bill, Greg." I pressed the end button and set the phone down. 10 minutes later, Sarah called. I didn't answer. I simply silenced the phone and went back to sorting through Arthur's old books in the study. For 3 years, I had bent over backward to make their lives comfortable, convincing myself it was what a good mother did. But I had only enabled their greed. Setting a boundary didn't make me petty. It made me free. And for the first time in a long time, I actually looked forward to tomorrow. Sunday morning brought a gentle knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and smiled. It was my son, Daniel. Unlike Sarah, Daniel had never asked me for a dime. He lived an hour away, worked as a high school science teacher, and built a quiet, content life with his wife. I opened the door and he pulled me into a warm hug, handing me a white paper bag that smelled heavenly of cinnamon. Fresh rolls from the bakery. He smiled, stepping inside. He paused, looking at the half-filled cardboard boxes lining the hallway. So Sarah wasn't exaggerating. "You really are selling the place." I led him into the kitchen and started the coffee pot. "Did she call you?" Daniel laughed, pulling out a stool. "She called me crying yesterday. Said you've gone crazy, that you cut off their credit cards and took back the house key." She wanted me to drive down and talk some sense into you. I poured 2 mugs of coffee, handing him one. And, are you here to talk sense into me? Daniel took a sip, looking around the kitchen he grew up in. Mom, I'm here to help you pack. It's about time you stopped letting them treat you like an ATM. Arthur would have put a stop to it years ago. A genuine smile touched my lips. Daniel had always been observant. He knew how Greg spoke to me, how Sarah took advantage, but he had respected my choices until now. I'm downsizing, I told him, pulling out a fresh roll. I found a beautiful 2-bedroom condo near the lake. No stairs, no yard work, and no room for permanent house guests. Daniel nodded approvingly. Good. You deserve peace, Mom. Just be prepared. Greg isn't going to let that equity go without a fight. He thinks this house is his retirement plan. Greg can think whatever he wants, I replied, taking a bite of the warm pastry. But his name isn't on the deed. Mine is. Tuesday morning, I was in the middle of wrapping my good china in bubble wrap when a car horn honked in the driveway. I peered out the living room window. It was Sarah's SUV. Before I could even reach the door, Sarah was marching up the steps, with my 2 grandchildren, Emma and Leo, trailing behind her. She pushed the doorbell impatiently. I opened the door, blocking the entryway. Sarah, it's 9:00 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know, Mom, she sighed, brushing past me slightly to push the kids inside. I have a spa day, booked with my friends. It's been planned for months. I need you to watch them until 4. In the past, I would have dropped everything. I would have canceled my own appointments, cooked them lunch, and exhausted myself to make her life easier. I looked down at Emma and Leo. I loved them dearly, but this wasn't about them. This was about respect. No, I said clearly. Sarah stopped in her tracks, turning around. What do you mean, no? They're your grandchildren. And I love them, I replied, picking up Leo's little backpack and handing it back to Sarah. But you didn't ask me, Sarah. You assumed. I have a meeting with my moving company in an hour, and I cannot watch them today. Mom, I can't cancel my spa day. It's non-refundable. She whined, her voice pitching up. Then you need to find a babysitter, or Greg needs to take the day off, I said, gently guiding the kids back onto the porch. I am not your on-call nanny anymore. You're punishing the kids to get back at me, she accused, her face flushing red with anger. I didn't engage with the manipulation. I'll come visit you both on Sunday. I smiled at the kids, giving them a quick hug. Then I looked at Sarah. Have a nice time at the spa. Drive safely. I closed the front door and locked the deadbolt. The moving company arrived right on schedule, and by Thursday, the house was mostly bare, echoing with emptiness. I was sweeping the hardwood floors in the living room when Greg's car pulled up. He marched up the walkway, his jaw set, looking like a man preparing for a boardroom battle. I opened the door before he could knock, leaning on my broom. Hello, Greg. He stepped inside without an invitation, looking around at the stacked boxes. So you're really doing this? You're throwing away the family home. It's my home, I corrected him. And I'm selling it. It's under contract, as of this morning. Greg's face darkened. He crossed his arms, trying to physically dominate the space. Look, Rosemary, we need to talk numbers. Since you're making a massive profit on this house, a house Sarah grew up in, it's only fair that a portion of that equity goes to us. We factored your help into our new build. I leaned the broom against the wall and looked at him. I didn't feel intimidated. I just felt tired of his endless entitlement. You factored my money into your lifestyle, I corrected. There is no fair portion, Greg. The house belongs to me. The money from the sale belongs to me. You are getting nothing. Sarah is your daughter. He raised his voice, stepping closer. You're just going to leave her high and dry. Sarah, and you have a combined income of over $150,000 a year. I stated, looking him dead in the eye. If you are high and dry, it is because you buy expensive wine lease luxury cars and eat at the Oak Room. You have a spending problem, Greg, not a mother-in-law problem. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Now, I said, pointing to the door, I have floors to sweep. Please leave. Moving day was a crisp, clear Friday. Daniel took the day off to help me direct the movers. He stood on the porch with a clipboard efficiently pointing the crew toward the right rooms. As the last piece of furniture, Arthur's old reading chair, was loaded into the truck, a familiar car pulled up to the curb. Sarah got out, wrapping her coat tightly around herself. She stood on the sidewalk watching the house she thought would one day be hers get emptied out. Daniel walked down the steps and stood beside me. We watched her approach. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked defeated. "You really sold it," she murmured, looking at the sold sticker slapped diagonally across the real estate sign. "I did," I confirmed. "A lovely young couple bought it. They have a golden retriever." Sarah looked down at her boots. "Greg's loan application for the new house was denied yesterday. Without your co-signature and the cash injection, our debt-to-income ratio is too high." I felt a brief pang of maternal instinct, the old urge to fix it for her. But I squashed it. Fixing it was what got us here. "I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah. You'll have to stay in your current home and focus on budgeting." "He blames me," she said quietly. "He says if I hadn't made that toast, we'd be fine." "He's wrong," I said gently but firmly. The toast just opened my eyes. "The problem wasn't the toast, Sarah. The problem was how you both viewed me as a resource and not a person." She didn't argue. She just wiped a single tear from her cheek. I didn't reach out to hug her. The boundary had to remain solid. "I need to follow the truck to the condo," I said, zipping up my jacket. "Take care of yourself, Sarah." Daniel squeezed my shoulder, and together we walked to his car, leaving the past behind. A week later, I was settling into my new condo. It was perfect. The morning sun hit the balcony just right, and my plants were thriving. On Tuesday evening, the doorbell rang. It was Sarah and Greg. I hesitated, then opened the door. I didn't invite them in. I simply stood in the doorway. Greg tried to put on a charming smile, but it looked strained. "Rosemary, the place looks cozy. Listen, we came to apologize. We've had a rough couple of weeks, and we want to make things right." Sarah nodded eagerly. "We miss you, Mom. The kids miss you." "I miss the kids too," I said, "but apologies usually come with a request." "What is it, Greg?" His smile faltered. "We have a massive tax bill due next week. We're short. Just a $10,000 loan, Rosemary, from the house sale. We'll pay you back with interest." I didn't sigh. I didn't get angry. I simply reached over to the console table near the door and picked up a small black leather notebook. I flipped it open to a dog-eared page and handed it to Greg. "What is this?" he asked, looking at the neat columns of numbers in my handwriting. "That is a record of every loan, emergency payment, and credit card bill I have covered for you over the last 3 years, I explained calmly. "It totals $47,500. Not a single cent has ever been repaid." Sarah looked over Greg's shoulder at the numbers, her face flushing crimson. "The bank is closed, Greg," I said, looking right into his panicked eyes. "You need to figure out your own taxes, sell your luxury car, cancel your country club membership. But do not come to my door asking for money again." I took the notebook out of his loose grip. "Good night, both of you." I closed the door until it clicked, sliding the deadbolt into place. 6 months passed. The winter melted into a bright, hopeful spring. My life at the condo was incredibly peaceful. I joined a local gardening club, read novels on my balcony, and started taking painting classes. Without the constant financial drain and emotional weight of Sarah and Greg's lifestyle, my savings grew, and my stress vanished. It was a Sunday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah standing there holding a Tupperware container. She was alone. "Hi, Mom," she said softly, shifting her weight. "I made that lasagna you like. I thought, maybe we could have lunch, just us." I looked at her. She wasn't carrying a designer handbag anymore. Her hair was simple, and she looked tired, but grounded. Daniel had told me that she and Greg had been forced to drastically downsize their lifestyle to pay off their debts. Greg wasn't happy about it, but Sarah was finally learning to say no to him. "Just lunch," I asked, holding my boundary. "No favors, no babysitting requests. Just lunch," she promised, offering a small, genuine smile. "I really just want to see my mom." I studied her face for a moment, looking for the entitlement that used to live there. It was gone, replaced by a quiet humility. I stepped back and swung the door open. "Come on in. I'll make some tea." We sat at my small dining table eating lasagna and talking about neutral things, my painting class, the kids' school projects. It wasn't the picture-perfect sweeping reconciliation you see in movies. Trust takes time to rebuild. But it was a start. As she washed the dishes at my sink, respecting my rule that guests help clean up, I looked out the window at the lake. I hadn't destroyed my family by walking away that Thanksgiving. I had saved myself. And in doing so, I had finally forced them to grow up.